So today we are going to discuss about Unit 5 revision part. So in this Unit 5, we have these topics: conductometry, potentiometry, polarography. So in which we are discussing about many important topics. The first topic is conductometry. So what is conductometry? So conductometry, the name itself indicating that metry means measuring, conductor means conductivity. So here by using this analytical technique, so we are measuring conductivity values. So we are measuring conductivity values of the solution. And here this conductometry is very much important. Why? Because so we are quantifying the sample. So this is a quantitative method. Why? Because so we have quantitative methods we have already learned in the previous class. So which are classified into different types. That is instrumental method, electrochemical method, etc. Okay, so this conductometry is coming under electrochemical method. Why? Because here conductivity, so electrical conductivity of a solution is coming under electrochemical property. So that's why conductometry is coming under electrochemical methods. Okay, and here also we are using electrodes. So but we are calling this electrode is called to be conductivity cell, right? So potentiometry, conductometry, polarography, these are all techniques which are coming under electrochemical methods. So today we are going to discuss about all these electrochemical methods. The first one is conductometry. So this conductometry is mainly depending upon few important factors. Okay, so first one is concentration, charge of ions, size of ions, and temperature. So these four factors are very much important. So when you are performing the conductivity experiment, the first one is concentration of the sample solution. If the sample solution is having higher concentration, so that means if the sample is having more number of ions present in the solution, then it can produce mobility, more mobility that we can see in the solution, so that more conductivity will be produced. Right? So it is completely depending upon mobility. And charge of ions. The second factor is charge of ions. If the ion is having positive charge or negative charge, especially negative charge, ions are having more radius due to presence of more number of electrons. So that's why negative charged ions will be producing less mobility. Why? Because when the ion is having negativity, so due to electronegativity, so here more electrons will be attracted towards that atom, so that radius of that atom will be increased, so that the size of the atom also will be increased. So when the size increases, the mobility will be decreases. So that's why here the charge of ions which will be influencing the conductivity values. The third one is size of ions. So when the size of ions are increased, the conductivity will be decreased. So in the periodic table, so we have many different atoms. So in the group, so when it is going down from the up to down, the size of ion will be increased, so that the mobility of ion will be decreases in the solution, so that conductivity also will be decreased. And the fourth one is temperature. So temperature is very much important factor. It is a critical factor, not only for this conductometric experiments, it will be a factor for many experiments. So why? Because here in this experiment, when the temperature increases in the solution, the mobility of ions will be increased. So ions will be easily and freely mobilized when we are increasing the temperature, so that it produces more conductivity. Right? So these are the four important factors. So we need to consider while we are performing this conductometric experiment. So what are the units of conductivity? So conductivity, so which is measured in Mohs. But there is a relationship that conductivity is inversely proportional to resistance. Inversely proportional to resistance. So that's why resistance are having the units of ohms. So conductivity will be having Mohs, and resistance is measured by ohms. And next, coming to the conductometric titrations. So we have many different types of conductometric titrations. So this conductometry will be useful in many titrations. So this is instrumental type of titrations. We are not using any indicator here. So we are using conductometer. We are placing the conductivity cell in the solution so that the conductivity cell will be measuring the mobility of ions which are present in the solution, right? But here we are doing many experiments, many titrations with various compounds. For example, if you take acid-base combination, so if you take acid, so acid will be titrated with a base. Why? Because acid-base reactions are neutralization reactions. Acid is neutralized by base as well as base is neutralized by acid. So this is the example for acid-base titration. Strong acid versus strong base. Strong acid versus strong base. So here strong acid, that is HCl, and strong base is NH4OH. Here HCl, which is taken in conical flask initially, then we are taking NH4OH in burette. So NH4OH will be taken in burette and HCl will be taken in conical flask. So initially, in the conical flask, more number of H plus ions are there. Why? Because HCl is a strong acid. So that's why more number of H plus ions will be released into the solution. So that's why due to presence of more number of H plus ions, more conductivity will be produced. So that's why here the conductivity will be starting from higher point. Okay, so this is a graph, so which will be explaining how this reaction is going on. Okay, so what is there on y-axis? So in y-axis, we are taking conductivity values. So what we are taking on x-axis? X-axis, we are taking volume of titrant solution, right? So that's why here the conductivity will be started at the highest point. So why? Because we are taking HCl solution. So HCl is a strong acid which consists of many number of H plus ions. But slowly, so we are adding strong base. Actually, this is not a strong base. This is the weak base. So NaOH is the example for strong base, NaOH, right? Right. So here NaOH is taken in burette, and this NaOH will be added slowly drop by drop so that H plus ions are getting consumed by OH minus ions and forming water molecules. So slowly the number of H plus ions available in the solution will be decreases. So here at this point, 100 molecules of H plus ions are there, 100 atoms. And when it comes to here, so it gives around 80, 60, 40, like this. So at this point, this is the end point. At this point, all H plus ions are completely consumed with OH minus ions. There is no further H plus ions are available in the solution. Now it reaches to the end point. Okay, so what is happening at end point? All H plus ions are consumed and forming a salt. So what is the salt here we are forming? So we are forming NaCl, not NH4Cl. NaCl we are forming. Sodium chloride will be forming here at end point. So that means the reaction is completed. It reaches to the end point. Now what happens after adding of NaOH after the end point? So there is no H plus ions are available, all are completely consumed. So that slowly when we are adding OH minus ions, so slowly here these OH minus ions will be giving the increased conductivity values. So why? Because the solution only having OH minus ions and salt. So that's why OH minus ions will be giving increased conductivity, right? So this is the graph will be telling about the end point. So we are getting the end point by using conductometric titrations, by using conductometry, right? Without adding of any indicator. Here we are not adding any indicator, but we are getting end point. This is not a volumetric titration. So in volumetric titration, generally we are adding indicators to visualize the color change. But here we are not adding any indicator, but we can identify the end point by using graph. The next one is strong acid versus weak base. strong acid versus weak base. So here HCl is a strong acid which is taken in conical flask, and a weak base, that is NH4OH, ammonium hydroxide, which is taken in burette, right? So initially, so more number of H plus ions are present. Why? Because HCl is very strong. So that's why the conductivity values will be starting from at highest point. But slowly, after adding of OH minus ions from the burette, slowly the number of H plus ions present in the conical flask will be decreases. Why? Because slowly these H plus ions will be consumed by OH minus ions and forming water. So neutralization is taking place, and here the salt is forming. So that's why slowly H plus ion concentration will be decreases in the solution. So that is the reason here the conductivity values will be decreased. But at end point, here also all H plus ions are completely consumed with OH minus ions. There is no further H plus ions are available. So that's why the reaction is completed, it reaches to the end point. So now after the end point, this is very much important. Here we cannot see any increased graph. So we can see a plateau. What is the reason for that? Why? Because after end point, still we are adding NH4OH, which is a weak base. So weak base means generally it is giving the less capability to release OH minus ions, very few. So that's why we cannot see any further gradual increase of any conductivity here. So after the end point, why? Because we are using a weak base, right? So that's why after the end point, so here the plateau, here we can get the graph as plateau, right? And the next one is weak acid versus weak base. Here weak acid is acetic acid, CH3COOH, which is taken in conical flask, and weak base is ammonium hydroxide, which is taken in burette. Right? So weak acid is having the less capability or low capability to release H plus ions. So that means very less number of H plus ions will be released by CH3COH. So that's why the peak will be started at lowest point. So very less number of H plus ions are present in the solution initially. But slowly after adding of OH minus ions, so here we can get a salt, that is CH3COONH4, that is ammonium acetate will be formed. So this ammonium acetate is having slightly increased conductivity than CH3COOH, right? So here the salt is produced, it is a conjugated salt, so which has a little more conductivity than weak acid. So that is the reason. So after the first point, here gradually, very slightly, it is not very sharp, it is very slightly, the graph will be increasing. So at this point, so all H plus ions are completely consumed. So that means we reach to the end point, right? So all H plus ions are consumed by OH minus ions. Now there is no further H plus ions are there in the solution. So now still we are adding NH4OH, so which gives a plateau. Why? Because, so as we already discussed that NH4OH is a weak base. It has very less capability to release more OH minus ions. It is not a strong base, it is a weak base. So that's why we cannot see any further increased conductivity. We can see only the plateau of the graph, right? So that's why after the end point, so here we can get only the plateau. Why? Because so we are using NH4OH, that is weak base, as a titrant solution. The next one is weak acid versus strong base. So here weak acid, so which is taken in conical flask, so which consists of very less number of H plus ions. Why? Because it is a weak acid. But in burette, we are taking NaOH, which is a strong base, which can release more number of OH minus ions, right? But initially, so we have only H plus ions, limited number of H plus ions are there. Why? Because we are taking a weak acid. So that's why initially the conductivity values are very less. It is starting at a lowest point. Slowly after adding of NaOH, slowly, so here what happened? So due to adding of NaOH, so here also we are forming a conjugated salt, that is sodium acetate will be produced. So which is also having more conductivity values than a weak acid. So that is the reason here slowly the graph will be increased very slowly, right? And at this point, this is the point where all H plus ions are completely consumed and forming complete amount of CH3COO Na. That means the salt formation is completed. So it reaches to the end point. But after end point, still we are adding NaOH. What is the purpose of adding NaOH after the end point? We got the end point, no? Here, why? Because to identify the exact endpoint, so it is very essential to add more NaOH. If you are adding more NaOH, then we can get another graph so that we can clearly identify the endpoint. So that is the reason after the endpoint, so we need to add excess amount of NaOH so that we can clearly observe the endpoint. So these four titrations are coming under acid-base titrations. And the next one is precipitation titrations. Precipitation titration, here precipitations will be formed which are insoluble substances. So here we can have two types of precipitations. First one is only one product is precipitate. For example, this is the reaction, a precipitation reaction in which AgCl is only the precipitate. That means in this both two products that we are forming here, that is AgCl and KNO3, potassium nitrate, in which only AgCl is a precipitate. So that means only one product is precipitate. So in this case, what is happening? In this case, how can we get the conductometric graph? So this is the graph which will be explaining about the precipitation titration for only one product. So initially, so we are taking potassium chloride in the conical flask and AgNO3 is taken in burette. So in which AgNO3 is acting as a precipitating agent. So here precipitating agent is added in the burette and potassium chloride, so which is there in the conical flask. So what we are precipitating here, we are precipitating soluble chloride ions present in the solution. So potassium chloride, which is releasing soluble chloride ions. So how can these soluble chloride ions are captured by a precipitate? So by adding of a precipitating agent. So precipitating agent, which is having a silver ion, so which will be capturing the chloride ion, that is a soluble chloride ion, which is present in the solution and forming AgCl. So AgCl is the precipitate. So that is the reason this is called precipitation titration. Here we are not forming any salts, we are forming precipitates, right? But initially we have taken only potassium chloride. So potassium chloride is taken in conical flask initially. Slowly we are adding AgNO3. So what happened here is after adding of AgNO3, potassium chloride is converting into AgCl, as well as potassium chloride is converting into potassium nitrate. But here important thing is AgCl is a precipitate. So which is insoluble precipitate, which is not solubilized. So when it is not solubilized, it cannot produce any ions. If ions are not produced, we cannot see any mobility of ions. We cannot see any conductivity. So that's why AgCl is not producing any conductivity. AgCl is not participating in conductivity values. But potassium nitrate is participating. Why? Because it is not a precipitate, it is also a solution. So which releases K plus ions and O3 minus ions. So which will be participating in the conductivity values. But here the important thing is we are getting a plateau. So why? Because in both KCl and potassium nitrate, so these two solutions are having similar conductivity values. In both solutions, we have K plus ions In both solutions, we have K plus ions, as well as we have Cl minus ion in potassium chloride and NO3 minus ion, which is there in potassium nitrate. But here, Cl conductivity, which is almost equal to NO3 conductivity. So that's why the conductivity values of potassium chloride and the conductivity values of potassium nitrate, which are almost similar. So that's why we cannot see any incremental growth of conductivity values. So that's why we can get a plateau, right? So here we can reach the end point. Why? Because all soluble chlorides are completely consumed and forming AgCl. We form a precipitate. Now what happens after this precipitate formation? So still we are adding AgNO3. So AgNO3 is providing Ag plus ions and NO3 minus ions. So now in the conical flask, we are not having any potassium chloride. Why? Because so we have reached to end point. All potassium chloride ions are completely consumed and forming AgCl, but AgCl is not participating in the conductivity values. Now we are adding, still we are adding AgNO3 from the burette, so which will give the conductivity value. So that's why here after the end point, here the increase in the graph, so which is mainly due to increase in the ions of Ag ions and NO3 ions, right? So after the end point, so we can see the gradual increase, which is mainly due to increase of AgNO3. So which is released from the burette, right? So this is about one product is precipitated in the precipitation titration. But what about the two products? If two products are precipitated, what happens? The second one is when both precipitates are sparingly soluble. So generally precipitates are sparingly soluble. So here we are forming two precipitates which are completely insoluble, almost insoluble. So this is the reaction, precipitation reaction. So here MgSO4 is reacting with barium hydroxide and forming barium sulfate and magnesium hydroxide. So in which barium sulfate is a precipitate as well as magnesium hydroxide is also a precipitate, right? So that means these two compounds are not releasing any ions. So that's why these two precipitates are not participating in the conductivity values, right? So only these two compounds only will be participating. So how can it is participating? So initially in this reaction, initially we are taking magnesium sulfate in the conical flask and barium hydroxide which is taken in burette. So due to presence of magnesium ions and sulfate ions, so here initially, so more conductive values that we can see at a starting point. So that's why the point will be started from the highest point, right? So why? Because more number of Mg plus ions and more number of SO4 minus ions are -2 ions are present. But slowly, so we are adding barium hydroxide from the burette. So here, so slowly when we are adding this barium hydroxide, so it forms barium sulfate and magnesium hydroxide in the conical flask, but these are precipitates which are not participating in any conductivity values. So, but here what is happening here? So here magnesium sulfate concentration will be decreases by slowly adding of barium hydroxide. So that's why when magnesium hydroxide, magnesium sulfate concentration decreases, the graph also will be decreases, right? At this point, this is the end point, at which point what happened? The all magnesium sulfate ions are completely consumed. There is no further magnesium and sulfate ions are there. All are completely consumed and forming precipitates. Now still we are adding barium hydroxide. Why? Because for identifying the exact endpoint, still we are adding barium hydroxide a little excess, so that again the graph will be increased. Why? Because so we are increasing the concentration of barium hydroxide in the conical flask. So that's why increased graph. So we can see after the endpoint by adding of barium hydroxide substance, right? So this is about precipitation titration. So which are two types. So first one is only one product is precipitated, and the second reaction is two products are get precipitated. So here we have seen already. So these graphs, how these graphs are moving, and the next one is displacement titrations. So here displacement will be taking place in these titrations. Displacement of ions will be taking place. Displacement of ions will be taking place here, right? So what is happening here? So here it is also two types. The first one is salt of strong acid with weak base versus strong acid. So listen carefully. Salt of strong acid versus with weak base, right? For example, if you take ammonium chloride, so this ammonium chloride, so which is a salt of strong acid. Where is the strong acid? So here chloride ions are obtained from HCl. HCl is a strong acid. Where is weak base? Ammonium ions are obtained from the weak base. So that's why this is called salt of strong acid with weak base. Okay, so what happens when we are adding strong acid? So when we are adding strong acid, so this is not a strong acid, this is HCl, we have to take HCl here, right? So when we are adding strong acid to this salt, so what happens here? So initially here we can see a plateau. So why? Because so after adding of strong acid to this ammonium chloride, so what happened here? This ammonium chloride is having ammonium ions and chloride ions, and here we are forming Na sodium ions and chloride ions, right? So due to presence of similar ions, what happened here? Ammonium chloride, so here ammonium ions will be displaced by sodium ions, and chloride ions also will be displaced by chloride ions. So that's why this is called displacement titration. Okay, the same conductivity values, the same charge compounds will be displaced so that we can get the same conductivity values. So that's why here, so these two, right, here the reactants, that is ammonium chloride, and the product, that is sodium chloride, so which are having the similar conductivity values, right? So that is the reason. So what happened? So here initially, so initial part is a plateau. The conductivity values will be same. Why? Because ions are simply displacing itself, right? So that's why the mobility will be same for the products as well as for the reactants. So that's why here the compound, the graph will be getting a plateau, and at end point all ammonium chloride ions are completely consumed, right? So after the end point, so here we are adding the titrant solution, so which gives the increase in the concentration, increase in the conductivity values, right? So here simply we can say that displacement titration so will be useful for displacing the ions which are having the similar charge, right? So that's why similar conductivity that we can see here in this reaction. So that's why initially, so we can see the plateau. So this is the one type of displacement titration, and the second type of displacement titration is salt of strong base and weak acid with weak acid versus strong base, right? So here this is also small correction is there, right? So here we have to take strong acid. So why? Because in the reaction we can see HCl. HCl is a strong acid, right? Okay, so initially what we are taking here? So here we are taking a salt. So what is the salt? So the salt of strong base and weak acid. Okay, so where is the strong base? Yes, sodium ions will be getting from the sodium hydroxide. So sodium hydroxide is a strong base, and acetate ions that we can get from the acetic acid. Acetic acid is a weak acid. So that's why we can say, so this salt is a combination of strong base and weak acid. So which is taken in conical flask, right? But here, so we are taking burette. In the burette, we are taking HCl. So HCl is a strong base, sorry, strong acid, right? So when strong acid is generally releasing more number of H plus ions, right? So initially, so we have taken a salt which has very less conductivity when it is compared with the HCl. So it is having very less conductivity. So that's why the conductivity values will be started from here. This is the lowest point. So it is started from the lowest point, right? But it is not giving plateau. So here the graph will be slightly increasing. So why? Because here we have a salt, so which is having a little more conductivity. Okay, so it is producing a little more conductivity. Okay, so that's why here slightly the graph will be increasing. So at this end point, so all salt molecules are completely consumed and forming the end point, and we are forming sodium chloride and acetic acid, right? So after the end point, still we are adding HCl. HCl is a strong acid. Still we are adding strong acid. So strong acid is releasing more number of H plus ions. So that's why the graph will be increasing. Okay. So these two reactions are coming under displacement titrations. And the next one is redox titrations. So here we can see this redox titration. So here reduction oxidation will be taking place in the same reaction simultaneously. So as we have already discussed in the previous class. So here ferrous ions are getting oxidized and converting into ferric ions, and dichromate ions are converting into chromium ions in the presence of acidic medium. So here acidic medium is very much important in redox titrations. So what happens when we are having acidic medium? So then only these two components, these two reactants will be reacted each other and forming products. If acidic medium is not there, it is not available, there is no reaction between these oxidizing and reducing agents. So that's why acid medium is playing a crucial role in redox titrations. So when more number of H plus ions are present, so here the graph will be starting from here. Okay, so why? Because so H plus ions are having higher conductivity values. It is around 320 is the conductivity value of H plus ions, right? 320 mMOS. So that's why here the conductivity will be starting from here at highest point, right? But slowly, so what happened? These oxidizing, these reducing and oxidizing agents will be involved in the reaction by consuming H plus ion slowly, so that H plus ion concentration will be slowly decreasing. So at this point, so all ferrous ions are completely converted into ferric ions. At the same time, all dichromate ions are completely converted into chromium ions, right? But now here at this point, so we cannot have highly acidic nature. It almost reaches to the neutral nature. So that's why, so mostly redox titrations are successful at acidic medium, sometimes at alkaline, at neutral medium, right? But it is not possible at basic medium or alkaline medium. Okay, so that's why formation of products are only possible at acidic medium as well as at neutral medium. So if you are decreasing the these H plus ions, that means if you reach to the basic medium, then the reactivity of these products will be decreases. So that's why here suddenly it decreases very sharply, but at this point there is no products formation is there. That's why here the reactants are very slowly involving in the redox titration. Why? Because very less number of H plus ions are available. So that's why, so here the reactivity will be decreases. So that's why we can see the very low graph, that is very less number of H plus ions are available. Why? Because all H plus ions are already consumed by ferrous ions and dichromate ions and converting into products. So this is about redox titrations. And the next one is complexometric titrations. So what is happening in complexometric titration? We are forming complexes, right? So this is the reaction of complexometric titration. So here we are taking HgClO4. So mercury chloride will be taken in conical flask and potassium chloride is taken in burette. Right? So here the graph is looking a small difference. That means we can clearly identify two endpoints here. This is the endpoint and this is the endpoint we can get. But here important point is the second endpoint is most considerable one. Why? Because at this endpoint, the reaction is completely completed. So and it is forming a complexes, that is HgCl2. But what about the first endpoint? Here also HgCl2 will be formed, but that HgCl2 is not a stable form. It gets dissolved, right? But at this point, at this endpoint, okay, the HgCl2 is completely stabilized and we can get a clear complex. So that's why here we can see two endpoints, but the second endpoint is most considerable one. Why? Because the reaction is completed at second endpoint, right? So this is about complexometric titration. Here we are forming complexes. And the next one is applications. Applications of conductometric titrations. So what are the applications where this conductometry will be applicable? The first application is solubility of sparingly soluble salts. Solubility of sparingly soluble salts. So here, this is the term, this is very much important, sparingly soluble. So generally precipitates are having sparingly solubility. It has very low solubility. For example, silver chloride, barium sulfate, lead sulfate. So these compounds are having very low solubility. It is very difficult to identify the solubility of those compounds, but it is possible by using conductometric titration methods, right? So this is the first application of conductometry. But how can we calculate the solubility of sparingly soluble salts? Here one formula is there. So by using that formula, so we can easily calculate the solubility of sparingly soluble salts. So that is, so solubility S equals to, so equivalent weight into 1000 into kV. So what is kV? So kV is a specific conductivity. So here kV is a specific conductivity divided by lambda V. So lambda V is equivalent conductivity, right? So by using this formula, so we can calculate the conductivity of a sparingly soluble substances, right? So equivalent weight into 1000 into kV, that is specific conductivity, divided by lambda V, that is equivalent conductivity, right? So by using this formula, we can calculate the solubility of sparingly soluble salts such as barium sulfate, silver chloride, etc. And the next one is ionic products of water. So how can we calculate ionic products of water? So ionic product of water is measured by Kw. Kw. So what is Kw? So Kw is dissociation constant of water. Kw is dissociation constant of water, which is around 10 power minus 14. 10 power minus 14. This is a dissociation constant of a pure water, right? So this is the ionic product. So we are calculated. This is the constant value of a pure water. But sometimes we are not taking pure water. We are taking some other product, some other water, pure impurified water, something. So we can identify whether it is purified or not by using these Kw values of that particular sample solution, right? So this is the standard value. This is the standard ionic product value of water, right? So by comparing the standard values, so we can identify, so whether it is purified or whether it has any impurities, we can easily identify. So that is the second application, ionic product of water. And the next one is basicity of organic salts. So generally basicity of organic salts is nothing but the number of carboxylic groups present in a molecule. For example, if a compound is having 2 carboxylic groups, okay, so which will be producing the basicity of 2. For example, if you take citric acid, so citric acid is having 3 carboxylic groups. So that's why, so which is producing the basicity of 3. So if you take tartaric acid, so tartaric acid is showing 2 carboxylic group in its structure. So which is showing the basicity of 2. So that means the basicity values which are completely depending upon the carboxylic functional groups, the number of carboxylic functional groups present in the compound. If the compound is having more number of carboxylic groups, so we can get more basicity. If the compound is having less number of carboxylic group, we can get less basicity. But if you take an unknown compound, so what happens? So when you take unknown compound, we don't know the name of the compound, we don't know the structure of the compound. So what happened? How can we calculate the basicity of unknown compound? So we can calculate the basicity of unknown compound by using a formula, that is B equals to, B means basicity, which is equals to lambda of 1024. Lambda means equivalent conductivity at 1024 dilutions, minus lambda of 32 equivalent conductivity at 32 dilutions, divided by 10.8. So this is the formula, so which will be telling about basicity values for the unknown compound. So for this, so we need to prepare 2 solutions. So we have to prepare 2 diluted solutions. So one is lambda 1024 solution and the second one is lambda 32 dilution. So by substituting these values here in this formula, so finally we can calculate the basicity. The next one is purity of water. So purity of water can be easily measured by conductometry. So why? Because a purified water, so which consists of a specific conductivity, a standard value is there that a specific conductivity of a purified water will be 5 into 10 power minus 8 ohm inverse and centimeter inverse. That is the standard value. What is the standard value? The purified water, which consists of 5 into 10 power minus 8 ohm inverse and centimeter inverse specific conductivity. So that means the water is completely purified. So if you take a test sample, so which consists of some impurities, then we have to measure the conductivity, and that conductivity has to be compared with the standard specific conductivity values, so that we can easily identify whether it is purely pure water or it is a normal salty water or any saline water. We can easily identify it. And the next application is quantitative analysis. So by this quantitative analysis, that means we are quantifying the sample. So we are identifying, we are measuring the concentration of the sample. So how can we measure this concentration? So by using a calibration graph. So by using a calibration graph. So what is calibration graph? So this is the calibration graph. On this here, on x-axis, we are taking concentration values. On y-axis, we are taking conductivity values, right? So generally, when concentration increases, conductivity values also will be increased. Why? Because these are directly proportional to each other. So when concentration increases, conductivity values also will be increased. So when we take 10% concentration, then we can see almost 10% conductivity values. When you are increasing the concentration, we can see increased conductivity values. So that we can get a linear graph when we are taking 5 different concentrations, linear concentrations. For example, this is a 10%, 20, 30, 40, 50. So when we are taking linear concentrations, when we are taking increasing concentrations, the conductivity values also will be increased, right? So this is called a calibration graph, calibrated plot, right? So, but here, what happened here is we are taking the calibration plot for standard solutions, not for test solutions, right? So after taking the calibration plot, now we are taking the test solutions and we are measuring the conductivity values and we are identifying the conductivity values of test solution in this standard calibration plot so that we can identify the concentration of that particular test solution by using this calibration plot, right? So that means we are simply comparing our test solution values with the standard solution values, and we are checking whether it is reaching to the 50% or 60% or 10%, and finally we are giving the report, right? So by this way, what we are doing here, by this way we can calculate the concentrations of what? We are calculating the concentrations of test solution, right? So this is called to be a quantitative analysis. Okay, so this is easy. So this can be easily performed by using conductometric titrations. And the next one is salinity of seawater. The salinity is mainly due to sodium ions and chloride ions present in the seawater. So we can test that seawater, we can test that salinity levels by using conductive values. Why? Because so these sodium and chloride ions which are producing mobility. So due to mobility, so we can clearly identify the conductivity values of those ions by using conductometry. So that's why it is very possible, it is very much possible to read or to test the salinity of water. So wherever the compound is having ions, so we can get the conductivity values. So if we get the conductivity values, we can easily identify the end products, right? And the next one is equilibrium in ionic reactions, right? So here this conductometry is also useful for, so whether the reaction is reaching to the equilibrium or not. So how can we identify it? So before equilibrium, the solution will be producing different conductivity values. After getting the equilibrium, the solution is getting different conductivity values. It is not similar. Okay, there will be some differences there. So that we can be easily identified by conductometric titrations by observing the conductivity values in the graph, right? So these are the applications of conductometry. So this is the first topic that we have covered in the unit 5, conductometry. And what about the second topic? And the next topic is called potentiometry, right? So what is potentiometry? Potentiometry is also an electrochemical method. Why? Because here also we are using electrodes, but here we are not measuring conductivity, we are measuring potential values. In potentiometry, we are measuring potential values, right? So how can we measure these potential values? We can measure these potential values by a Nernst equation. This is the Nernst equation. So by this equation, so we can measure the potential values of the solution, right? So before going to the Nernst equation, what is electrochemical cell? We need to know about this, what electrochemical cell, so that we can know what is happening in the battery, electrochemical battery, how this oxidation is occurred, how this reduction is occurred. So how these electrons will be transferred from one position to another position. So we can easily identify by this electrochemical cell, right? So this is the electrochemical cell, the structure, so which consists of anode and cathode, right? So here zinc metal is acting as anode and copper metal is acting as cathode, right? So we are placing a zinc metal in the zinc sulfate solution and copper metal in the copper sulfate solution, and these two electrodes are attached with a battery. Why? Because the battery is necessary to provide to give electrons, that means to provide some potential difference between these two electrodes, right? So here battery will be connected here in between these two electrodes, and here there is a salt bridge also there, so which will be balancing the ions between these two containers, right? So what is happening here in this electrochemical cell? So here in this electrochemical cell, oxidation and reduction will be taking place. Okay, so this is oxidation here. So in this container, so oxidation is taking place here. Zinc ions getting oxidized and releasing 2 electrons, right? So these released 2 electrons will be slowly moving towards a copper electrode. Okay, so which is moving to cathode. So here what happens? So here for Cu plus 2 ions which are there in the solution will be accepting these electrons, and Cu plus 2 ions are getting converted into copper ions, right? So I repeat, here at oxidation position, here what happened? Here zinc ions, so zinc metal will be melted and it is converting into Zn plus 2. It is converting into Zn plus 2. But where is this melted portion? This melted portion is available in the form of electrons, and these electrons will be moving towards the cathode. So now this cathode, which is placed in the copper sulfate solution, the copper sulfate solution, which is having copper ions and sulfate ions, Cu plus 2 ions and SO4 minus 2 ions. So these copper ions, Cu plus 2, Q plus ions will be taking these 2 electrons and converting into Cu, that is copper. So that here the copper on the surface of copper, so here more copper will be deposited on the cathode side, but whereas in case of anode side, here the zinc electrode will be slowly getting melted out. So that is the difference that we can see here, okay, in between zinc electrode and copper electrode, right? So at this zinc electrode, what is happening here? Oxidation is occurred. So what is oxidation? Here loss of electrons is called to be oxidation. Here zinc, it will be getting lost 2 electrons, and that electrons will be accepted by copper ions which are there in the copper sulfate solution, and it is converting into copper, and this copper will be deposited on the surface of copper electrode, right? So this is about electrochemical cell. This is the general construction of the potentiometry. This is not an exact construction. This is the general idea of the potentials, how these potentials are formed, how this potential difference will be formed, and how these electrons will be transferred from one place to another place. This is the general idea, right? And next, coming to the Nernst equation. So what is happening in Nernst equation? Nernst equation will be useful for measuring the potential values. What are the potential values? The potential values of solution, a sample solution. So where these potential values are produced, how these potential values are produced? Here the sample solution is having ions. It consists of ions, as well as the sample solution is there in the container where we are placing the electrode. So that's why electrode is generally made with metallic wires, right? Here we have zinc electrode and copper electrode, right? In some other electrode, we are having platinum wires, silver wires, etc. So that's why the metallic wire or metal surface is also producing some potential values. So that is called to be E naught, right? So E naught is a standard potential values of the metal. Okay. So E naught plus 0.0592 by N. So N is the valency of the compound that we are testing, so which is there in the container, and log C is the concentration of the ions. So how is it diluted solution or concentrated solution? So we can measure it, right? So this is the formula for measuring the potential values of the solution, the sample solution. Okay, it is not only depending upon the concentration. So here, so we need to conclude, we need to add this E naught value also. Why? Because so every time whenever we place the electrode, so definitely, so we need to consider E naught values. Why? Because metal wires are present in the electrodes, so which are also having a standard potential values, and that potential values also included with the potential values of the sample solution. So that's why, so we can see the potential values on the digital screen of the potentiometry, so which consists of both E naught plus the potential of the solution, right? So here this is called Nernst equation. So Nernst explained so how these potential values will be measured in the sample solution by this equation. Next, coming to the reference electrodes. So what is the use of reference electrode? Here reference electrodes are the electrodes which are giving a standard potential values. This is very much important. If reference electrode is not there in the potentiometry, so we cannot measure the potential values. Why? Because in potentiometry, it is completely depending upon oxidation reduction processes, right? So at one electrode surface, the oxidation will be taking place. At another electrode surface, the reduction will be taking place. That means one hand is giving the electrons and the another hand is taking the electron. So it is very much essential that we need to have two important electrodes, right? So one is reference electrode and the second one is indicator electrode, right? So now we are going to discuss about reference electrode. This is the reference electrode. We are having different types of reference electrodes, such as standard hydrogen electrode, silver chloride electrode, and saturated calomel electrode. So in which saturated calomel electrode is most widely used one. Why? Because it has many advantages than other electrodes. But here standard hydrogen electrode can also be act as indicator electrode. So it can be useful for reference electrode as well as indicator electrode. But here the problem is hydrogen electrode is very sensitive. So it is getting many problems. So that's why we are not using hydrogen electrode as a reference electrode. So calomel electrode is most preferable one. So most widely used one, and it is not producing any problems. It is causing any problems. So that's why saturated calomel electrode is most widely used reference electrode. So coming to the standard hydrogen electrode, what is the construction of standard hydrogen electrode? This is the standard hydrogen electrode construction, right? So here we have a narrow tube. So through this narrow tube, here the platinum wire will be passed. At the end of the platinum wire, here there is a platinum black is there. What is this platinum black? Actually, the platinum wire, so when it is placed in the strong acids or strong bases, actually this platinum wire gets melted out. So that is the reason there will be a coating is there on the platinum surface that is called a platinum coating, a platinum black coating, right? So that's why at the end of the platinum wire, there will be a coating is there. This is called a platinum black, right? And which is getting the resistance from the acids or bases. That means the corrosive substances when we are using as a sample, so it may affect the platinum wire, it may melt the platinum wire. So that's why the platinum wire has to be coated, right? So this coating is called the platinum black. This is very much essential. So if coating is lost, so we cannot get the accurate potential values, right? And here we have a outer a sleeve is there, okay? So this sleeve which consists of some vacuum inside. That means here it is completely filled with hydrogen gas, right? So that's why this electrode is called to be hydrogen electrode, right? So why? Because the surface, the platinum surface, so which is there inside, it is completely saturated with a hydrogen gas. So that's why this electrode is called to be hydrogen electrode, right? But here important thing is, so what type of hydrogen gas that we need to send through this electrode? This is very much important. We need to send 1 atmospheric pressure of 99.98% of hydrogen gas to be supplied. right? These are the two important metrics that we need to follow. 1 atmospheric pressure and 99.98% of purity. So if you fail to produce these metrics, if you fail to produce this hydrogen gas which is having these metrics, so we cannot get the proper potential values. So that's why standard hydrogen electrode is very much difficult to operate, to construct. Okay, so it is very much difficult. That's why it is not widely used one. Of course, it has a few advantages, but most of the many disadvantages are also there. So that's why it is very difficult to handle. So that's why you're not considering as the most widely reference electrode. Okay, so calomel is better than hydrogen electrode. So we can see in the coming slide, so how this calomel electrode is better than this hydrogen electrode. Right, so here this hydrogen completely is saturating this platinum wire that which is there inside the chamber. So now this hydrogen, so which is hydrogen gas, which is completely saturating this platinum wire and placing this entire setup in the solution. This is the sample solution, right? So if you are using a sample solution, so here the hydrogen electrode is acting as indicator electrode. If you are using a standard solution, then this hydrogen electrode is acting as standard or reference electrode. What is the difference between standard solution and sample solution? So sample solution concentration is unknown. So we cannot know the exact concentration, but standard solution concentration is known. For example, sometimes we can use saturated solutions, right? If you are using saturated solutions or one normal solution, then we can call it as, then this hydrogen electrode is acting as a reference electrode. So if you are using unknown solution that we don't know the exact normality or molality of that particular sample, then it is called to be an indicator electrode. It is acting as indicator electrode, right? So what are the merits and demerits of hydrogen electrode? Hydrogen electrode can be useful for the measuring the entire pH value. This is very much important. Why? Because hydrogen electrode is having the hydrogen gas. So hydrogen is very active element, so which can easily reduce, which can easily oxidized. So that's why, so it will be measuring the entire pH value. So pH value from 1 to 14. So which will be measuring strong acids, weak acids, okay, neutral substances, everything will be easily measured by, so these values, this hydrogen electrode. So this is the merit of hydrogen electrode, right? This is the main important merit. And the demerit, if you come to the demerits, so here, so if the sample is having oxidizable and reducible substances, so there will be getting a problem. So why? Because hydrogen is very active element, so it can immediately react with the oxidizable substances and reducible substances. So that's why we should take care of oxidizable or reducible substances which are there in the sample solution. So we need to remove that oxidizable substances so that we can get a clear pH values. If not, so definitely the pH values will be affected by these oxidizable or reducible substances. And the next demerit is the platinum surface. The platinum surface just generally it is getting poisoning. It is getting poisoning. That means the platinum surface will be melted, so that platinum wire also getting melted. So the potential values will be affected. So that's why we need to check periodically, so whether the platinum surface is properly there or not. So any melting is seen, melting is there on the platinum surface. If it is melted, then we have to coat with the platinum black, right? So this is about construction of hydrogen electrode. Next one is silver chloride electrode. Okay, so what is this silver chloride electrode here? So we have a silver wire. Okay, so silver wire, so as we already discussed that metal wires are present in the electrodes, sometimes platinum wires, sometimes silver wires, sometimes silver chloride wires, right? So here we are taking silver wire. So this silver wire, so which is dipped in the solution, but actually the silver wire is very thin. So it is also has to be coated with silver chloride. So that's why at the tip of the silver wire, there will be a silver chloride coating is there. Okay. Now this silver wire along with silver chloride, here we are placing in a solution called potassium chloride, KCl, right? So KCl, potassium chloride solution is placed, okay? So which is there in the tube, and this silver wire which is placed in the potassium chloride solution. So what is this potassium chloride solution? Here the potassium chloride solution is a saturated solution, a fixed concentration solution, so that we are getting the fixed potential values. So what is the main difference between reference electrode and standard electrodes? So reference electrodes are producing a standard potential values, which are fixed values, which are not deviated, which are not depending upon the environment, which are always same. What about indicator electrodes? Indicator electrodes are completely depending upon the concentration of the sample solution. If sample solution concentration increases, the potential values will be changed. If it is not, potential values will be fixed, right? But how can it is possible? So here we are taking a saturated solution, saturated KCl solution, potassium chloride solution, so that the concentration remain constant in the tube. But we are placing silver wire inside the tube, so which is there in the KCl solution. So that's why here we are finally producing a standard potential values. Why? Because KCl is not changing. We are placing the same solution for entire experiment, right? So that's why here we can get the fixed potential values. We can get the standard potential values, right? So that's why silver chloride electrode is also called to be a standard or reference electrode, which produces standard potential values. So what is the merit of silver chloride electrode? So it is easy to use. So very easy to use. There is no difficult part. There is no formation of any gas with a specific matrix, right? Like in hydrogen electrode. So it is very easy to use. And demerits, it is difficult to prepare, right? So actually we don't know the exact construction, but it is difficult to prepare comparing with the other electrodes. And the next one is saturated calomel electrode. This is very much important electrode in reference electrode. Why? Because this is most widely used one. Why? Because it has many advantages. It doesn't have any demerits which are there in the hydrogen electrode, right? There is no poisoning effect, and there is no interfering of oxidizable and reducible substances. So these problems that we cannot see in the saturated calomel electrode. So that's why saturated calomel electrode is most widely used one. Okay. So what is the construction of saturated calomel? This is the construction of saturated calomel electrode, right? So here we have a calomel. So we have the calomel paste, so which is saturated with potassium chloride, right? So actually, if you see the construction part here, outside is called to be sleeve, and inside tube, glass tube, is called to be jacket. Okay, so inner jacket and outside sleeve will be there. And inner jacket, so here we have at the bottom, so we have a calomel, so which is saturated with potassium chloride. Here we are forming a paste. Okay, so we are forming a pasty like substance with calomel and potassium chloride. We are placing at the bottom of the electrode. This is the actual electrode that we are placing inside the sleeve, right? And just above this calomel, so what happened here? We have mercury, right? So through this mercury here, a wire will be passing, that is silver wire will be passing through this mercury, and the entire setup which will be placed in a saturated solution. So here also we are using saturated solution, right? What is the saturated solution? A fixed concentration of potassium chloride that we are using here. So that's why we can get the fixed potential values, right? And at the bottom of the sleeve here we have a porous plug, so which is made up of asbestos, so which consists of pores, And these pores, here we have crystals of potassium chloride. So that means if you see, so we can see at every part potassium chloride is there. The potassium chloride saturated solution is there here. And the potassium chloride which is mixed with the calomel in the form of paste, so which is placed at the bottom of the jacket. And also potassium chloride crystals also there along with porous plug. So that means everything is every part, every construction part of saturated calomel is having potassium chloride. So that's why this is only the demerit which is produced by saturated calomel. What is this demerit? Here the electrode cannot be used in the measurement of potential of cell where K plus and Cl minus. Right? So what happened here is potassium, due to presence of potassium ions and chloride ions, right? So here, so this potassium chloride is also adding some potential values. So calomel itself cannot give the standard potential values. These potential values also influenced by potassium chloride. Why? Because potassium chloride is there everywhere in the construction part. It is there in the jacket, it is there in the sleeve, it is there in the porous plug. So that this is only the demerit. Okay, so what about the merits? So here the easy construction, so comparatively, so it has easy construction and the stability of potential is also very stable here. The potential values will not be changed. Actually, these potential values are depending upon two important factors. So that is temperature and concentration. Okay, so if you're not changing the temperature and concentration, so you cannot change any potential values. But whereas in case of hydrogen electrode, so if you're not changing the concentration temperature also, so there is a chance of getting changed potential values. So why? Because potential values are depending upon many factors. So hydrogen gas, pressure, purity, and oxidizable reducible substances, right? And platinum surface, these are all influencing the potential values. Right? But these factors are not influencing the potential values in saturated calomel electrode. Saturated calomel electrode potential values, which are only depending upon temperature and concentration. If you are not changing this temperature and concentration, if you are performing the same temperature, if you are performing the experiment at the same temperature, at room temperature for about 25 degrees centigrade, and the potential values always will be same. But it is not possible in hydrogen electrode. So it is very difficult to get the potential values, accurate potential values by using standard hydrogen electrode. So that's why saturated calomel electrode is most widely used one comparing with the other reference electrodes.